So I'm János Fiala-Butera. I'm a newly appointed lecturer at the Center for Disability Law and Policy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for staying with us so late. And I'm conscious we are very close to the end, so I will be very short. We already had heard nice concluding remarks, I think, from you, but James. But let me just add a few issues I picked on today. So we heard excellent presentations, which are really filling the gap on the lack of evidence, on the lived experiences of persons with disabilities. Research which is really giving voices to the invisible. And this work really must be continued. Much more work needs to be done to uncover all the abuses and violations of rights which people with disabilities are subject to. But let me not comment on specific presentations. I think all of them were excellent, but on three overarching themes which I noticed today. The first one is came up already in the keynote speech, which is the vicious circle of there not being enough research on the lived experience of persons with disabilities, which means there is not enough awareness on the side of policymakers, for example, on the rights violations of persons with disabilities, which leads to lack of interest in addressing their situation and lack of research. Again, so there is a vicious circle which must be broken, and the research which we heard about today is breaking this vicious circle. But maybe it's also important to think about research funding as another important area which has the potential to break this vicious cycle. Perhaps research funders should really step up and think about how to make how to fund more research into disability issues. A few presenters mentioned that persons with disabilities should maybe sit on ethics committees. Maybe it's also time for them to sit on grant committees. And it's not only disability-specific research which needs to be highlighted here, but mainstreaming disability into all types of research. There is a lot of policy research done also in Ireland, which is very relevant for persons with disabilities, and their experiences are just not reflected on it. This can be changed. So nowadays, it's very common for research applications to ask about gender aspects, because all research can be relevant for gender issues. So all researchers are asked to think through whether their research is relevant. Not everybody is asked to pursue those points, but they need to think about. So maybe it would be a good idea to ask everybody who is doing research to think about whether their research has any relevance for disability. All research does, and maybe if people gave more thought to it, there would be more evidence on the lives of persons with disabilities. The other important issue is dissemination. So even if there is research, it's often not acted on. It's not getting to those persons who should do something with it. Policymakers, for example, are often not aware of even evidence which was uncovered. Sometimes, I have to think about ourselves, universities, researchers are also probably not active enough in disseminating the research findings they have. So maybe there is space for cooperation between researchers and advocates, not only in designing research, but also making sure that it's disseminated in the correct format and it gets to those people who should really listen to the results. And the third issue is what I have is what I had many times today is the sense of urgency in many of the topics which are covered by this research. Let me just say that I've been working as a lawyer representing persons with disabilities, many of them living in institutions, and one of the issues I found as an obstacle to access to justice is that many of my clients have actually died during those proceedings. So 5, 6, 7 year proceeding is a long time, even for a lawyer, but for somebody living in an institution and subject to constant abuses, that can be too long. So access delayed, access denied, as we say, this time it really literally meant, justice delayed, justice denied. This time it literally meant that. So many of the theoretical issues which are covered by the research are really interesting, but they can mean the difference between life and death for some persons experiencing those issues. Think of inclusive police practices. It's a very important topic, very nice topic. For somebody, really, it can mean the difference between abuse and dignity, or between life and death. Or reasonable accommodation in the workplace. Again, a very important and interesting theoretical issue. For somebody, it can mean the difference between fulfilling work and life in poverty. So I think it's really important for us to highlight that these issues are not something which can be next on the agenda sometimes when the state is doing well, but these issues must be acted on today because there are many people with disabilities out there who are subject to these abuses and violations of their rights on a daily basis, and they cannot wait. So let me just join me in thanking our panelists today who are filling this gap in the lack of evidence on the lived experiences of persons with disabilities, and let us wish them strength to continue this very important work. Thank you.